There's some allegations that you've made some online posts to the Prime Minister of Canada. Do you have anything to say about that?
Why are they doing this? Right? And again, I know what your answer is going to be, and you can go ahead and give it.
Oh yeah, but they're disarming people. It's plain and simple. What did they do to Australia? What did they do in New Zealand? What did they do in the UK? You think it's a coincidence that those three countries had all their guns removed?
No, that's what it's
and
not
now,
a coincidence. That's
and now they have all the censorship laws in place. Is because, you know, I posted about this today, and we're supposed to have guests, so I'm not sure what's happening right now. We're supposed to have two guests joining us at 7:30, but clearly it is not happening right now. So I don't want to say. It was kind of a surprise.
Okay.
That's why I do my intros. It would have been for a very good conversation. So I'm not sure. 7:35. I'm not sure what's happening here.
Yeah,
actually, I'm going to text one, but you know, man, to me, this is all part of an agenda that's going on worldwide at the moment. If you look, populations are being disarmed. And as soon as population gets disarmed, you start seeing those censorship bills rolling out because they don't have an opposition anymore. This is always the way that it works, and that is Marxism 101. Look at any country that went communist, that went socialist. What do they always do? They disarm the people first. They take the weapons away so that those people cannot fight back. That's plain and simple. There's a good reason why, if you look at the US, however you feel about the US nowadays, but if you look at the first two amendments, the First Amendment being free speech and the Second Amendment being the right to have a regulated militia, these are the first two ones. Basically, there's nothing more important than free speech. And if you lose your free speech, you want to make sure that you have enough guns to gain it back. That's it. That's the first two amendments of the Constitution of the United States, which is brilliant in my opinion. This is the most important piece of legislation, if you ask me, ever written, or those two amendments, because outside of that, I don't need more than that. Free speech no matter what, and I have the weapons to take it back. The rest of me, don't care. It's all niceties to have, but if you don't have those first two, you're not free. And this is what we're seeing in Canada. You know, for all the people out there, we're only about 2.5 million legal gun owners in Canada that have their registration, that are in good standing, I guess you could say. That's 5% of the population. If you think that we're 40, give or take 5% of the population. So I understand that 95% of people don't really have a play or don't really care about what happens to firearm owners or their firearms. But the point of the matter is that without guns, this country would have never came to existence. Do you honestly believe that the guys that came here 300-400 years ago would have fought bears with their bare hands? Yeah, fuck no, bro. So guns made Canada. Guns are part of Canadian culture, at least the Canadian culture I was brought in. People hunted. People believed in self-defense. This was a way to protect your loved ones, to put food on the table. And that's a fucking fact. I don't care how people feel about this. Canada is a gun nation, yet we have none of the problems that people can blame on guns that the US does. We don't have those problems. We can't even compare ourselves to them. I don't think there's no problem in the US. If you remove the top 10 states, the top 10 biggest cities in the US where guns are basically illegal, where only criminals have guns, you start to realize that the US is not even top 30 country in the world with gun crimes. The people that own guns legally are not the problem. We're not the one going around shooting people, and that's both in the US and in Canada. But the point is that Canada was built with guns, just like the US was built with guns. It is part of our culture. But we forgot that. We forgot. We don't even know what being Canadian is anymore. Ask the average person. Ask your mother next time you see her. What does it mean to her to be a Canadian? And see what she answers.
Yeah, I think I think definitely, regardless of where you stand on guns, even if you're not strongly interested in the gun issue one way or the other, you should still want government to spend resources making laws that to solve real problems, right? It's just a waste of our governmental reason. They're doing so little things as is. They're barely there as it is. I'd much rather you spend your time trying to solve real problems, right? Maybe try to bring the crime rate down. Focus on that shit. So that's sort of my take on it. I would say most of the information I have about guns comes from being on the show. But yeah, I've seen enough to know that even though I'm not a gun owner, just from a civil liberty standpoint and just a effective use of government resources standpoint, I don't see this as a problem. Legal gun owners are not the problem here. They're not any sort of problem. They're not in the top 100 of problems facing Canada. So that alone should make you oppose spending, whatever billions of dollars they spent already on this ridiculous gun ban.
Man, if you look at the statistics, legal gun owners in Canada are the safest people in Canada by far. It's not even close. If you go by statistics, we are the safest people, because the average Canadian doesn't know that, but my name is ran through 2 federal databases every single day to make sure that I didn't cause a problem. I didn't have an incident that could prevent me from owning firearms. Because if I did, they're going to come knock at my door and take my guns away. There's no other part of society that are not criminals that have this type of eyes on them at all time. Last time I checked, and I don't know if that changed since this whole gun ban started back in 2020, 2021, but it used to be the case that the RCMP just needed to give me 24 hours notice before showing up to my house because I own firearms. They had the right to show up. I had to let them in so that they can inspect my firearms, see if I'm storing them properly. It was something like 24 to 48 hours that they had to give me. You don't even have those rights for a pedophile that's been convicted, that's now on parole. You can't just say, I'm going to come visit you because you committed a crime in the past. You need to have a reasonable reason to do so. But as a gun owner, you don't need that. They technically can show up.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yet we are the safest segment of the population in Canada, and that's how we're treated by a liberal government that's trying to disarm us. But it has nothing to do with fixing gun crime, because clearly we're not the ones committing. 95% of the gun crimes are done with guns that were never legal in the first place. 90% of them come from the US. 5% of the gun crimes are caused not by the guy that owned the gun legally, but by a firearm that was owned legally at one point. So somebody invades my house, steals my guns when I'm not around, and they use it in a crime. That's 5% of the crimes. The rest of the 95% are illegal guns. So even our guns are not the problem.